you?
Good morning, Anne. Hello, how are you?
Oh my goodness. I am fabulous. I am in Northern California and you are up in Kodiak Island in Alaska. And I thought we should just get started with you introducing yourself because I know many of our members don't know you.
Sure. So I do live in Alaska. I'm on Kodiak Island in the Gulf of Alaska, and we're getting longer days, so it feels like springtime, but it's still a little chilly. I still have snow in my yard. But this is where I live, and I'm actually sitting in my studio. I have my work wall behind me, and then I have a work table over here that off screen that you can't see. I like to work in a lot of daylight. I'm inspired by my marine environment that I live in. I love coastal, I love beach, I love a lot of floral. I see a lot of overlap just sort of in the shape and the natural form, and all of those things inspire my art.
And I love the fact you're wearing a beautiful coral colored blouse today.
We're sort of twinsies. I'm looking at your shirt too. It's a good color.
I know. And we've got a little bit of the blue highlight too, which is lovely on your necklace and on my sweater. It's like we didn't coordinate, but we both look fabulous, if I must say so myself.
Because we love the color. Exactly.
So you were sitting in front of an incredible array of products that you offer. And I thought it would be really fun for us to talk about all things paper and your love of paper and how you kind of got started on your creative path.
Sure. I think like a lot of us, I like color. I like doing arts and crafts. I like creating. I love to garden and cook. All of those things sort of feed into creativity. But I love paper. I love paint on paper. I love cutting paper out. And it took me a little while to feel okay with that. When you look at other things that people create in the world, a lot of people work on canvases or, different medium. And really, I am all about paper. And I think now that I've built up a little bit of an audience, I think people expect paper products from me.
And you work still primarily in watercolor, don't you?
Pen and watercolor. I love a heavy, rough, cold pressed paper. And then when I do get in the mood, I do collages and I hand paint my own paper and then cut things out and build designs. So those are sort of my two primary areas.
And you offer a variety of different products. So talk a little bit about what we are just seeing kind of as a snapshot behind you.
Sure. So I still work on paper. So I know a lot of people like to work digitally. I am on paper, and then I have to figure out how to get that sort of hard copy design into some sort of product. And I started really with the basic card and the basic print. And it took me a long time to grow from there. But I do have a couple new products I want to show you and your crowd. So I went from prints and cards and stickers, and then just recently I've done a little tablet, like a shopping list tablet, and a journal. So these are all just sort of different products that you can get your designs on. And so this, of course, is a repeat that I learned how to do in your program. And I think there's just room for it everywhere. We talked earlier, like there's a lot of fabric and a lot of people are attracted to pattern design because it's fabric, but I really like to do it on paper. So I'm finding different ways to do that.
You have everything printed, right? And
Yes.
You live on Kodiak Island. So talk and share a little bit about how did you find the resources that would allow you to still have a good gross margin on your products? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's always, it can be a battle, right? So whether you live remote like I do or live in a small town, I have had to go off island for some of my products. So I look for larger companies. I look for companies that understand how to ship to my area. And then it's trial and error. I have a couple companies that, it doesn't work, whether it's freight or the product. So I think if people live near larger communities, I would say go find a place where you can like meet the person and color proof in person and touch the paper and see the products. But if you have to go online, then you'll have to find different companies. And I think, I don't know if now is the time to mention it, Anne, but I know that I have a resource list that people will have access to through you and your membership. So
When you are trying to work with a printer, do you send your files in PDF form? Tell us a little bit about how you do that so that you maintain the crispness of what you want your final product to look like.
Sure. So I'm pretty basic when it comes to technology. So I have a printer scanner that I use to scan my pieces. And I can save, depending on the company, I send things as PDFs, I send things as JPEGs. I don't know that I send things in Illustrator, normally too large of a file. Sometimes people have specific dimensions that I need to do. Otherwise I say to them, like, I want my sticker to be, a 3-inch circle, or I want, this to be on a 8.5 by 5.5 notebook, right? And they can make that magic work. Some people send templates, but don't be overwhelmed by it. Like, it's as basic as sending, like uploading a JPEG. If it's too big, you can use something like WeTransfer. There are a handful of these companies where you can put your larger files on their platform, and then the recipient gets a link where they can get into your files. But it seems like I'm doing a lot or making a lot of products, but it's the same technique of scan it, JPEG, send it.
And do you get samples of everything back?
Yes and no. So sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. When I did these tablets and notebooks, I did have to just order them and purchase them and hope that they came the way I wanted them. I did do sort of a run through. I had to tell them, like, some of your notebooks have ink smears on the pages, and they'll ship me replacements for those. So you do have to do some quality control. I started small. So these framed pieces are all originals on the wall here behind me. So I started at small markets where I'd have my originals and I'd have a handful of cards. When I lived in Juneau, I worked with a local art group and art company, and they suggested, Natasha, it needs to be an 8x10 so people can put it in an 8x10 frame. And now with that advent of Instagram, a lot of people like an 8x8 square image. So it's sort of that mix of doing what you want to do creatively, but also making it easy for people to purchase your art or frame it or use it.
It's really important to interact with real people so that you can get their feedback on your art, and also make sure that you're listening to what is going to sell best, whether it's the size of what you're offering or what it is offered as, what the end product is. So talk a little bit about your most recent event.
Sure. So Kodiak is a small but mighty town, and we do have some really fun local events. And every spring there's a spring women's show and a fall women's show. And I just completed that women's show this past weekend. And I take a variety of products. You get your booth, you sort of get what you get. And I always ask for some wall space behind me so that I can have like a display on the wall and not just on the table. I always pop in a few originals. You never know who wants to spend for a larger ticket item. And then I try to have a price point that runs from like $4 to $30 or $4 to $75, or my originals run higher, but in terms of product on the table, I try to have this really easy gift purchase price range, right? Like, you want a notebook or you want a packet of cards. And it makes it easy for people to get a variety of your things.
And how do you address sort of merchandising the space? So it's really smart for you to ask for a wall, because obviously people can then see your work from across the room.
Absolutely.
And it gives you also more space. But talk also about, you've got a little spinner, you've got a variety of other elements on your table. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It's taken time. So I've built this up over time, and I am the nerd who like sets up her folding table in her home and like does the practice display to see what works. So I try to repurpose whatever I carry my stuff in that I can flip and put on my table. Like if I'm carrying it in a crate, that becomes one of my display items. Or even if it's a cardboard box, I can put a tablecloth over that or a piece of fabric over that to give height on my table. because you're really trying to create like a mini storefront or a mini window display where people are enticed to come to it. Um, and like a funny side note, I worked retail for years as a teenager and in college, and I love doing displays. So if it's something that intimidates you, set up your folding table, put a tablecloth over it that comes down to the floor to hide everything you're going to shove under the table. And then practice, right? Like practice displaying. Can people get to things? Is there height? Is there front to back, like that depth? Where are people going to knock something over trying to get to the thing in the back? So that's how I've done it. And I never sit at my booth. So I have a tall folding stool. So if I do get tired midday, I can sort of perch on a stool, but there's no sort of like sitting back or reading a book or looking at, like the phone is a disaster, right? Like put the phone away so you can make eye contact. Yeah.
And generally, how long are your events? Are they 4 hours? Are they all day? What are they like?
So pre-COVID, we had like a Friday night bash and then all day Saturday, which was super fun because people, you know, it was like an after work hour on the Friday evening. Currently, that particular show is from 10 to 4, so a 6-hour show. The best shows for me are the ones where I can get in the day before to set up and then walk away, put my feet up and go back the next day refreshed. But we do have a couple shows in town where you have to get there at 7 a.m. to set up for the 10 a.m. So that's sort of like, if you forget anything, you're kind of sunk, right? You have to have your list, you have to have your checklist so that you don't forget your iPad or your cash bag. And my most brilliant thing I've done recently is hire a teenager to help me on that particular show. She shows up at 7:30 to help me, and she shows back up again at 4 to help me haul things. So yeah. So I take payment cash, and I used to take checks. Every once in a while, I still get a check. I have a card reader that goes directly to my Shopify store. But previously to that, if people don't have store, like an online store, like you can use a Square, you know, like there are multiple ways to do the card reader or the card swiper. And then my daughter is so proud of me. I finally have my little Venmo code, like my little QR code, and I took some Venmo payments for the first time this weekend. And so certain times of the year, I get a lot of cash. And other times of the year, people want to do credit card. And just this time, I had somebody ask if I did Apple Pay, and I'm like, I just figured out Venmo. So no, no Apple Pay today. So yeah.
Yeah, but that'll be good for the next time around.
Right. Yeah.
So what were some of the big takeaways from your most recent show?
You know what? People want small, happy, cheerful items from me. And so I don't often have text or font on my cards, but I did develop, I have a birthday card now, and I have a Mother's Day card. And so having like specific holiday or specific messaging, I guess is a better way to say, like specific messaging on a card is new for me. And I think people are attracted to that. People were excited to see tablets. Like these were a good seller. I thought the fatter one might be, but people really like the shopping list style. So things like that are good to learn. And it's just nice to interact with people. You know, we had a couple years of being everything online, and I think people just want to visit. People want to chat and see what you're up to.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So talk a little bit about, for those of us who are more introverted than others, how do you start the conversation, or what are some of your go-to things to not to bother anyone who's looking at your table, but to avail yourself in case they have questions?
Sure. So I really try to stay away from the hard sell. And even though it's like 2 tables or, you know, like a nook for a booth, I always say, welcome to my booth. Thank you for coming out today. We can have some really rotten weather here. So I'll say, thank you for coming out on such a rough day. Or if it's beautiful, like, thank you for coming inside on a beautiful day. You know, people often don't know it's my art, right? Like, oh, is all of this yours? And I'm like, Like, of course it's mine. So I'll say to people like, oh, these are all reproductions of my original artwork. Let me know if I can help. Are you looking for a particular card? It's sort of, people can be shy. Like, people get intimidated by that hard sell, right? Like they're afraid you're going to like push them into buying. So I try to tell them, oh, these are, pen and watercolors, what I like to work in, or give them that background story or the process story, so that they can see the connection between the product in front of them and what you've done to get there. That you're welcoming them into your little world. Like, pretend that booth is your studio, or your living room, or like where it's like inviting and casual and fun.
Do you ask specifically for their email after they buy, or talk a little bit about how you continue to try to grow your email list?
The best way to grow an email list is to have a giveaway. People are trying to move fast. People are trying to hit all the booths at the event. And we've become so automatic, or so, we're so used to moving quickly that to stop and write your information down is a hassle. You can do a QR code that says, stay in touch, or, you could do a QR code to enter a raffle, I think. You can do anything anymore, but give them a reason. Like, what are they going to get in exchange for giving you their email address? Is it the chance to win a pack of cards? Is it some digital download? Yeah. I'd love to show you my moo.com business cards. These are always a huge hit, right? People cannot believe that I have these business cards that have my art on one side. And I give these out like hotcakes, right? So I say, oh, pick your favorite design. And so they'll dig through all of them and like pick the one that resonates with them. And so I think it goes a long way, right? Like, they're not trying to write their name down. They're not trying to fill something out, but they get this moment to interact with my art on something small. And I have a favorite friend, client, customer friend at this point, and he slides it down the front of his phone, like on his phone case. And so he'll stop by and be like, I need a new business card to put on my phone. And I think, if I can send out a little piece of art in the world, like, that makes me happy. And I give people art sometimes if they're hemming and hawing, or they want one of the prints, or they're looking at an original. I'll give them a card with the image on it and say, just take it, call me later. This time around, I had some sticky notes with my image on them, but I'm not sure I trust the glue on the Post-it note thing. So I gave those away. And I said, you guys can be my quality control. Like, let me know if they stick or not. So I think there are a lot of ways to interact with your audience and to build that audience without feeling like you're really hunting them down to get their information or to lock them into something. I think it's about building human relationships.
So let's segue for the last segment here to talk about your website, because you recently had a name change and needed to update your website. So talk about your inspiration when you first created the website.
For everyone out there in your audience, Anne, like, I think websites are scary, right? Like, there's a huge learning curve, and start basic, right? Like, what message do you want to share with people? What artwork do you want to share? And I knew across the top there that I wanted to have my homepage. I knew I wanted to have a shop. I knew I wanted to have news. I was afraid to call it a blog because I'm irregular with how often I post, but I thought, well, it's news from my studio. I wanted to have some way to connect with wholesale vendors. And I wanted my about page just to be called Natasha, and then to have a contact. So it's absolutely a work in progress. I went from a free Weebly website to a paid Weebly website, and now I'm on Shopify. There is a learning curve involved. I have cried over websites, not gonna lie. I have a fabulous friend here in town. We can discuss community sometime, and building your community to help you in the areas where you're not strong is absolutely the ticket. And I have a fabulous friend here in town who has helped me build this website. So I try to change what's across the top. So now it's a Happy Mother's Day. I'd had Valentine's in there. I'd had winter holidays in there, so that people can just sort of see what's bright and new on the website.
It's wonderful. I mean, it's so incredibly colorful, and you have a subscribe button here so that
Yeah.
people can, in fact, get onto your email list. And then your mission is to create art that brings a burst of color to your life, which is absolutely fabulous. And then let's go up to your shop site now. So this is new from Shopify, having the ability to showcase all of these different categories.
Well, and what I learned from my tech guru friend here in town, she is a wholesaler. She runs a shop and she wants to be able to see collections. And so I think for all of us to be able to view our artwork in groupings or collections is a way to curate our own artwork. And I think it makes us a stronger I think it makes a stronger presentation. Like, here's my Valentine's Day collection. Here's my holiday collection. Here's my stickers. Like, right? Like, people don't want to have to comb through all these things. So if we pull up Mother's Day, thank you, Anne, like, it's not a huge collection, but it curates it for people who just want to go in there and find the one thing.
Yep.
So it's a game changer for me, and mine is not perfect. I think it can be cleaned up. I had a friend say she wants like a bestsellers collection, so she can just go straight to the bestsellers. I'm like, well, that's a brilliant idea that I never would have thought of. So
yeah, fantastic. And then you do have a wholesale ordering section, which is also awesome.
So I learned interesting things. So I love doing wholesale, and that's on my, my 2023 list of things to create and make stronger. People still like a hard copy. I just mailed out a hard copy of all of my note cards to them, like a sheet, a sales sheet. So it's a balance between having things online and having something physical for people to hang on to.
Yeah. And then here you are with your beautiful one of your beautiful tables, talking a little bit about you. And then let's just go back to your homepage so you can talk a little bit more about the creation of your font.
Sure. So I love to do collage. So all of the lettering that you see here was originally cut out of paper. So often, I mean, I do it in color. So that Natasha Zahn studio, like, I cut those pieces out in painted colored paper. But then, of course, in Adobe Illustrator or in Photoshop, you can like change the color. So I turned it into a black and white font so that sometimes it's not that busyness of the color. I can just go straight to the font.
Oh my God, love it.
Yeah. So, and then I guess we can segue into name change and reclaiming names. So I had to rebrand my studio, and it's a big step for any of us to change our name. Like, my name was on everything for a really long time. So I reinvented without changing it too much, right? So the Natasha Zahn is the same, and I put studio across the bottom. So it looks the same. If someone's casually glancing at it, they're like, oh yeah, that's Natasha's thing. But as
it was Natasha Zahn, and then it was your husband's name, but now you replaced the husband's name with the word studio. So actually the layout is very, very similar.
Exactly. So I think that familiarity is a good thing, right? It looks
people know they're in the right place. They didn't get lost.
Yep, they recognize me. But as you and I found out, or I found out the hard way, like, none of my links worked for our resource page that I built for you for the bonus course. So I'm finding it everywhere, like on business cards, on my logo, on links, on web pages. So it's been a process for sure. So that entire video is under my previous name. And I thought, oh, this will be like, I'll update it. But you can't, like, it's everywhere. It means refilming things that have my branded tissue paper in it, or refilming something that has my logo sticker on it. So this is a great opportunity, Anne, I think, to say, like, there are times when you need to make the change. We updated the links, right? You can find me. But it's a fun bonus. I made it in the past. I was happy who I was when I was making that bonus, and now I'm moving forward, and I'm not going to retrofit it, right? I just have to keep moving forward and building different classes or building different products sort of in my current name and my current studio brand. It's easy to feel like it's been a refresh and to make things look new.
Fantastic. Well, I am so excited that you have moved over to Shopify, because I know that there are a lot of people in the community who are super curious about what website should I sign up with. And tell us just what was the decision, what were some of the key decisions or key questions you asked yourself before you made that change?
I knew if I wanted to grow my business, I needed to be in a platform that could do that, not for me, but that where I could grow larger. I also knew that I had tech support in my community here in town. And I don't think I could have done Shopify without having someone do it with me. I needed to, I can get to a certain point and then I'm stuck, right? With a lot of technology. So to have someone hold your hand was a huge help for me. But I wanted to be able to expand my wholesale. I wanted to make it easy for people to order online. And I wanted to be able to organize my things, like curate those collections. So I needed to kind of grow up a little bit with the website.
So as we wrap up, just talk a little bit about what your plans are for the next quarter. What's on the horizon for you as you come into real spring and summer in your beautiful part of the country?
You know what? Summertime is when I build my calendar images. So I have, learning those deadlines that happen way before I need to sell a product. I need to have 12 images by July so I can start building my calendar. So it means I have daylight, I have decent weather, I can be inspired by things and get my painting done. So that's this quarter. But then I have a couple things on the back burner. I learned that it's okay to back burner a few ideas. I've been teaching in person to adults and it is fantastic. And I want to build that sort of live teaching in my studio that will segue into something online in the future. And I'm connecting literacy and art, right? So I'm doing line drawing with adults. I've worked with teachers. I've worked with admin from around the state in connecting how mark making helps kids with literacy. And it's been so fulfilling. Like, this is the direction I need to go with my art, as opposed to teaching any one of us, like, here's how you paint watercolor. Instead, it is, what language can we give kids so that they can make marks that we need them to make on the page. And we're going to do that through art, and it will strengthen their literacy.
Wow, that sounds incredible, Natasha.
Really fun.
Yeah, and so incredibly both fulfilling and valuable for generations to come. I can't wait to see how you evolve that online to reach a larger audience. That's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I think that's also like a little mini segue is, people will say to me, well, how come you don't teach kids? You should teach kids. I really like working with adults, right? And so to be able to be okay saying, like, I don't want to work with your kid, like, I want to work with adults and see the trickle down. That is finding your niche, right? That is finding your groove and your group.
Absolutely. And it's also really being true to your why. Why do you do what you do? What level of energy are you bringing to what you do, and who are the people that you want to serve? And that's so important, because it helps you get out of bed in the morning with a smile on your face and have the energy to continue to serve in that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's taken me a long time. I think, like, when you talk about what's your why, it took me a while to be like, this is my why, like, this is great. So I would say we all just need to keep exploring till we find that.
Yep, exactly. It's not always the first answer.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Natasha, for joining me today. This was such an incredible conversation.
So fun. Thank you for having me, Anne. Have a great day.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye.